is not enough. What do you do? What are we here for? What do you truly want when change is not enough? What do you do? Let's talk about it, the problems we face. Let's fight hatred, no time to waste. The mind is naked, we can see it without an x-ray. Life is easy if we work together. We're the keepers, we're the people, we're all equal, filled with purpose. The past has pain, it'll drive you, even make you take aim. But together is where we should aim. Together is where we should. What are we here for? What do you truly want when change is not enough? What do you do?
You're listening to the Be Forever Cool podcast. My name is Rex45, and I have I don't even know what the word to use. I have a pretty cool person I'm going to interview and introduce in a little bit. Very excited about that. Before I introduce him, though, I want to just thank everyone for liking and subscribing. Go to BeForeverCool.com and get connected to all the platforms we're on. Really appreciate all the comments and all that fun stuff. But with no further ado, let's get it going. Eric Wood, welcome to the show, man. How you doing tonight?
We're doing great. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome, man. Well, let's get right into it. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. So we really appreciate that. But let's talk about, how you got into motorcycle. What was your story? I started riding back in 2012, started racing in 2013. So I was pushing 40 already. And I was fortunate that Jesse, Jesse Fenton mentioned in Garage 4 mentioned Seacoast, which I bought a Ducati from, and just talking to them got me into the whole world of what's happening at Loudon and stuff like that. But what was your story like? How did you get into riding?
Well, that's a great crew to get started with. Those guys are definitely enthusiasts up there. I started a little sooner than 40s. I think I got my first motorcycle when I was 3. Wow. My father, of course, started the Penguin Racing School years ago. Back in 1973, he was riding motorcycles in the 60s and raced all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so I had that good fortune to be born into a racing family. Right. My first motorcycle was an Indian, a Chowjet 50. And at 3 years and 3 months, I did laps around my kitchen table at Christmas morning, and suffered my first crash on my 4th lap where I drove the thing straight into the wall. So that was my introduction to motorcycling, and so and it just kind of went on from there. I think I raced that bike when I was 5 years old for my first time at a track in Pepperell, Massachusetts, and been off and on ever since. So it's been a fantastic journey.
Yeah, let's talk about your dad a little bit. I mean, racing, was he up and down the East Coast, across the country? Well, and what was racing like, back in those days from what you remember?
I mean, racing was really different. It was huge. We used to ride it. It wasn't New Hampshire Motor Speedway back then. It was called Briar Motorsports Park. And I think I first went there when I was somewhere around 6 months old. So I literally have spent my entire life at the racetrack up in New Hampshire. My dad was primarily a regional racer, although he went and did some national stuff from time to time. Did a lot of national vintage racing but he did some AMA Battle of the Twins stuff and that kind of stuff. I remember he had an old bevel drive Ducati that he competed with on that kind of stuff, and that was the bike that I remember him doing national stuff on more than anything. They grew up in a time when racing was Grand Prix stuff. I mean, even newer riders, they started out on TC 250s, and they would build them, and that was like kind of a standard bike. You see, like literally 125s and 250 Grand Prix bikes out there. There was a lot of production motorcycles as well, but Grand Prix bikes were more like the norm. That it was kind of like the TC 250 was almost like the Ninja 500 of the day. Not exactly, but that was kind of the deal, and so. There was a lot of just homegrown guys that went and did really well. I remember watching young Richard Chambers out racing, and of course all the top guys. I mean, I remember like Mike Baldwin and Kevin Schwantz and those kind of guys racing at Loudon when I was little. Mm-hmm. The John Ulrich when he was a competitive racer and doing endurance stuff. And so it was, so I grew up there my whole life. And so my father did this for a long time. And then, in the early 70s, there was no licensing really. It was like, if you wanted to get a race license, you kind of showed up and paid your money and they said, okay. And as you imagine, that was not exactly the safest situation. There were a lot of people crash and get hurt pretty badly. Yeah. And so the guy that was helping to run the track from day to day, his name was Ted Goddard. He was at the racetracks all the way into when New Hampshire Motor Speedway was there for the first few years. And so he spent decades at the track. And so they kind of get together and said, hey, we need to come up with a way to prepare people to ride so when they understand which direction everyone's going, what the flags actually mean, and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So the Penguin School was started back then in conjunction with the racetrack to kind of create a sensible process for someone to come out and enjoy the racetrack. And so it started as a licensing thing for a while, and then it evolved and they started offering an advanced course, and various people started doing that. John Betancourt was the first one to really be the leader of that. And he was one of course, the stars of New England. He was one of the guys that came from our local racing area and came and won races around the whole country. Johnny was kind of a unique talent. He's one of the few guys that won nationals both on road race bikes and on motocross bikes. So could ride a motorcycle to say the least. Had a incredibly magnetic personality, and was really big on going to race against all the national guys with his buddies from home. And that's kind of how he ran his whole career. And my father was his crew chief for a while. He built TZ 750 motors. He actually. My father founded a company called Competition Machine and Supply. They sold stuff at the racetrack. And for those of guys who know Street and Competition came from him buying my father's old inventory and starting Street and Competition from there. Wow. And he built TZ 750 motors for a while, and then, followed around Johnny, and Johnny, won a national superbike race and finished third in the Daytona 200 back when it was a world level event and stuff. So it's kind of cool to watch all that stuff growing up. And, so I had a really rich history and upbringing with that kind of stuff. Right. Very, very fortunate.
Yeah. And so when your dad started the school, how old were you about? And were you the first student, or were you already getting lessons after your first crash in the kitchen?
I was 2 years old, so I wasn't quite ready to be a student yet. I got my first sample of the racetrack long before I was supposed to. I think I was maybe 13 or 14 years old, and threw my leg tiptoed over a GPZ 550 and did a few lap times, did a few laps at lunchtime one time, and kind of got the hook for it and stuff. And, I raced all kinds of stuff when I was younger. Kind of the traditional, we did everything. My brother and I, we did motocross, we had hail scrambles, we had hill climbing, ice racing. Like if there was a way to race a motorcycle, we did it. And I did all kinds of regular sports too. When I was younger, I really kind of get into it more full time. I rode my whole life, but I really started to become more of a full-time racer like as I was finishing high school and starting college, and that's where I got a little bit more serious with it.
And at that time, what was it like for someone trying to get into racing? Was it a lot easier than we see these young guys today? I mean, I hear stories from some of the folks I've interviewed. It seems like there was more cash flow back then than today.
I mean, honestly, to get started, even today, I don't think it takes a ton of money. I mean, if you just want to get your feet wet, I mean, I mean, back in those days, I spent $800 on an '88 Kawasaki EX500 and threw some tires on it and was ready to go. So I thought, I mean, I wouldn't exactly call myself a world beater at that point, but you can go out there and you can do the same thing today. You can literally go buy virtually the same motorcycle, like Kawasaki Ninja 500. You can buy a used one for a couple grand. Inflation adjusted, it's probably not that different. You can throw a set of tires on it and maybe some body work, and you're ready to go. So, the entry level stuff, I don't really think is that difficult right now. It might be actually kind of a myth that I think it's that hard to get into riding. I mean, you don't have to show up with a $40,000, brand new Yamaha R9. I mean, they would compete with Moto America on. That's you don't need that $40,000 motorcycle to get started. Right. You can do it on something that costs a few $1,000 and put it together with your friends. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's that hard.
Gotcha.
So it was similar back then. I think the biggest difference is that there were definitely more young people doing it. When I get in, I was 18 years old, and the group of riders that was in that 18 to call it 25 range. I mean, there was like dozens and dozens and dozens of us. It was big. There was tons of young riders, and through the majority of my career is pretty long now, so the majority could be all the way back in maybe going from the early 80s into like maybe 2000s. It was easier to get going at a national level for sure.
Right.
We can go down that road. Club racing, I still think is very accessible and easy for most people. If you're going to go do nationals, I think there's some definite bigger hurdles now. I was very, very fortunate when I started doing the national level stuff that the motorcycles industry was as healthy as it was. There was a lot more money around. Sponsorship wise, yes, continue to see for sure. I could go to an AMA national back in the days, and if I did what I hoped to do, which is like, all right, I'm going to go take, like, for example, for a bunch of years I was riding like 750s, and so I'd go do 750 Super Sport and say, hey, I'm going to go try and finish as high as I can in this. Maybe we can finish, in the top 10 and have a good finish, and then if I go and ride Superbike as a second class, and all the factory guys are ahead of us, and you're competing for that, like maybe 14th to the 18th place, kind of be the first privateer in a super sport kind of thing. You do those two things, I could go and pay for my weekend and make money, come home, like pocket, a few $100 after I'm done paying all my expenses.
Right.
That's a fantasy right now, unfortunately, for a rider to be able to do that. So I was super lucky to be able to do the majority of my pro career in that kind of atmosphere.
Right. And what was the pro career like as far as like how many rounds were you having in a season back then?
Well, I mean, I think I went back and looked at my old schedules. I mean, there were some years, especially early in my career, between club racing and doing the different national series, I did like 22 race weekends a year. So like, you go from, March Daytona to October Daytona, and it felt like, you'd be racing 3/4 of the weekends. In the old days, I mean, right now for our racing in New England, we do 6 rounds, right? And we were doing 8 for a long time. And then the economy happened and things shrunk down a little bit, and some dates were harder to get. So we were down at 6, but like our club race series used to be 11. We used to do 7 races at Loudon and 4 races at Bridgehampton. In the same period. And, there was like almost back-to-back weekends, and people just, it was a little bit more affordable than to do that kind of stuff. And people just say, hey, they were committed to this, full on, which was great. And so, but times change and things evolve, and you just roll with it. And, I think that there's still a lot of healthy upside to the sport in the future. So, and that's one of the things we've been working for in recent years. My later careers have been focused on trying to help grow the sport, trying to help foster younger riders and that kind of stuff. And there's a million things that happen in between there, obviously.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that some more a little bit later on, because I remember, I started going loud, like I said, 2013. So I think it might have been 2015, 16 when you guys were talking about building up the younger riders and investing in building up the community and stuff like that. So I remember those conversations, and years later to see it coming back, and to see what the Bagger series has been able to do for Motor America as far as drawing attendance and stuff like that. I know it's not quite where it was, but it's definitely, I can personally say it's definitely it's grown a lot more since 2016. But let's talk about, your dad has the Penguin School, you're racing. At that point, were you looking at teaching and instructing kids when you were graduating college around that time you were racing, or was that kind of later on?
Well, I started out just focusing on myself. I was more of a student than I was a teacher, of course. I had lots to learn. My father taught me through my earlier years, which was great. And then I had lots of great mentors growing up. Like Johnny Betancourt was someone I learned from a lot. I think one of the guys that probably made the biggest impact on my riding and my thought process for how I did it, because he was the guy who was kind of teaching me as I was starting to become a pro, was probably Dale Quarterly. Mm-hmm. He was one of our advanced instructors again, just a guy who was from our local area, super talented guy. He was the last guy to be a privateer to win an AMA Superbike National back when there were, 12, 14 factory riders, and it was a really big deal, and guys were getting paid 7 figures to go do it. And he did it as a effort, funding his own deal. And Dale continued to be successful for a long time. He stopped racing in his early 30s, but then went on and helped mentor a bunch of other riders, after that. And we've even worked together at times, working with riders. We talked when it came to bringing guys like Ben Glady and Teague Hobbs together, we were working together with those guys a little bit. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And Dale's a guy, I talked to him this morning, actually. So, long time relationship with guys like that. And he made an impact on my racing for sure.
Nice. And, you asked, back then, what was the mindset like for, training and practicing and just being motivated to go fast? Because, we see now there's a lot of support for riders, especially on the training side, on the mental fitness side and stuff like that. We see old movies and you'll see guys finishing a beer and then going to race, or having a cigarette, more in car racing movies than bike racing. But, what was it like back then in the paddock and stuff?
There's a broad spectrum of how people would approach it. I think that, there's 2 ways we can go after this question. Broadly speaking, I think that there was not nearly the technology or the science behind what goes on now. Riders now, they literally will hire trainers and have, people to help them with their diet and people with their mental, that kind of stuff. Our mental stuff was, toughen up, Buttercup, let's go. There was much less hands-on with that kind of stuff, and that wasn't studied as much. And as far as training, it was just kind of traditional stuff. Guys would run. I did, when I was probably at the peak of the most serious of my professional career, I did more training on dirt bikes than I did anything else. I theorized back in those days, and okay, a superbike race on average would take 40 minutes or so. It could be 35, 40. That's kind of the average window. And I said, well, if I can do, a 40-minute moto on a 450 motocross bike, at a pace, mm-hmm. then I think I'm training myself to be pretty good. And you go to the gym and lift to be strong and that kind of stuff. But for me, dirt bikes are my primary mechanism. I do a little bit different now, where I do some definitely more targeted training on my cardio fitness. I do a lot of high intensity interval stuff, and I still ride dirt bikes. But being that my bones are more brittle than they used to be, I try to avoid falling out of the sky from 40 feet as much as I possibly can. So, but I still love riding dirt bikes. So it's still something that I enjoy. I just gotta take it a little bit in moderation. injuries have made it harder to take hits on that, and even like landing off a big 80-foot jump can be tough. I've got wrist issues and that kind of thing, but it's all right. We've figured out ways. I'm very fortunate, and I have a wife who's a doctorate level nurse practitioner, and so if I need help when it comes to nationals medically, she can make me good to go. So
nice. We listen. We all want one of those. I have 3 sisters that are nurses, and so it's nice to be able to get some good information on inside.
I won't share names, but I can tell you this: that I have been out during nationals when I was not racing on a Sunday and been shocked at what some of the guys in perhaps the 90s were willing to put their body through chemically before they would go race the day after. It's those guys were animals, and maybe I don't want to call it less serious, because they were certainly serious on race day, but they were also serious on Saturday night as well.
Right. And I think that's I think we heard it from like the former NBA players when they talk about the 80s and stuff like that, and Michael Irvin from the Dallas Cowboy days. I mean, he still reminisce on some of the shows he's on about those days. So it was a different time where it seems like we as human beings could tolerate that. Where I just heard on the news the other day, the young kids now, a good percent of them are not even drinking. So it's a lot different today than how we used to live.
They'll probably live longer, but there's a time when if everyone's doing the same thing, then there's no perceived advantage. You know what I mean? So if they're all party animals and they're all doing the same thing and they're all dealing with the same thing on Sunday, then the field's pretty level. But I think that when you've got, a handful of people that have talent and are insanely motivated to do all the right things, if you don't fall in line and do that stuff as well, you're going to fall behind. So, if you want to be competitive and you want to win these days, you almost don't have a choice. Right. You know what I mean? Which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned the live longer, but we also see that riders and athletes today in general are playing at a higher level longer, where before, it was through injuries or what have you. It was a shorter career. How long were you a pro for, and what made you decide to step away from it?
Well, I did my first pro race. Let me see. I started road racing in general in 1990. That was my very first. I went to Bridgehampton and went out and had a good time, and broke my hand in my first race and said, I'm stuck in. I can't wait to go back and heal and do this next year. Did 4 races as a novice in 1990, and then 91 was my first full season. I did that on an EX500. I managed to win an expert championship then, and then went from an EX500 to a ZX7, which was a giant reality slap. My third race on the ZX7, I lined up for an AMA 750 Supersport National, rolling out to practice. I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool. It's my home track. We're all good. And, up rolls number 1, Scott Russell next to me. And I kind of felt really small and a little out of place at that point. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be here. I don't know. But ended up having a race long battle with someone you know well, Ricky Doucette. Mm-hmm. And we fought it out for 20th place and had a good time. But, the fields were deep back then. I think there were probably 35 or 40 riders. So we did a solid mid pack, and that was my first time ever doing it. I did nationals all the way through probably 2010. From there, most of those seasons were doing full seasons. We chased at first it was just like, hey, I'm going to hit the ones I can make, right? So I hit 5 or 6 nationals a year for a while in the 90s. I went after my first national championship in the Formula USA series in 1997. And did full seasons all the way through probably 2007, and then did again, probably finished my career again doing 5 or 6 races again, and did that to probably 2010, 2011. Then went back to regional races, and I've still hit some nationals here and there. I think the last time I did Daytona 200 was like maybe 2015. And then my quote unquote pro races now are just kind of waiting for the pros to come around to Loudon so I can go play with them with the classic. And I look forward to those every year, actually, because it's fun to go measure yourself against those guys every season.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, so you're not. You're still a pro. You're still racing. But I remember. I don't remember if it was before the pandemic or after. It was you had a race down in Homestead. Is when you guys were going to Homestead in December, and I remember a race.
Love that.
I don't remember the. I know it was a Spanish guy you were racing, and I think he was on a 600, and it was a close fight. I think you finished second on that race. What is it like, being an older person racing these young guys, and as they say, rubbing is racing. What is it like today racing with these young kids?
I love it. I mean, it keeps me sharp. I mean, I subscribe to the theory that if you stay at this and you keep at it and you keep going and you keep your mind fresh, there's no reason you can't be competitive well into your 50s. It's not a problem. I mean, Jeremy McWilliams, I think, is 60 years old and still runs at the front of national races. And the key for him is he never stopped. I mean, You're talking about a guy that, he was at a MotoGP level at one point and just kept going. And so you're a guy that, you catch him on the right day and he can still go win a hooligan race national against a bunch of guys who are super talented. So, I think it's just a matter of, you keep your body in good condition and you keep yourself mentally sharp. The hardest thing is if you step away from it because, your mind stays pretty adapted to processing things at speed after you do it for a while. And when you step away from it, it's that being able to process information that quickly and stay ahead of the bike that really can catch up with you. I mean, I had an injury. It was like 99, just utterly destroyed my right knee, and it had nothing to do with road racing. I did it in my backyard on an XR100. But I mean, it was like pretty gross. I snapped 3 of the 4 ligaments in my knee and fractured my femur and tibia and cartilage and meniscus all at the same time. So I had 4 or 5 months of sitting in a CPM machine in my living room, letting the machine move my leg for me, and I missed all of that next season. And when I came back, it was like the biggest thing, and I was still young at that point. It was catching up to the timing. I was behind on things and my brain wasn't quite up to speed. And, being young, is I caught back up, but it took me a couple of weekends to really be able to process things again. And I think that, if you stay with it, I mean, I've seen racers here, get like age 70 and still be able to ride. I don't know if that is what I aspire to be. I'm going to keep doing it until I'm not competitive anymore. And if I don't feel that I can reasonably run at the front, then maybe it's time for me to step back and take a rest. But, at the moment we're still able to do that. I'm really fortunate. There's always good young kids to keep me honest. And when the national guys come, I can't quite beat Tyler Scott or those guys yet, but we're going to give it another try this year and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll say this. I took a year off last year. I did the Saparana race down here last year, and I did it again this year. I didn't race between last year and this year, and I jumped on a monster 1100 with these guys, and I could only go as fast as my eyes could move. And it was just I'm telling my brain to do something, and my leg is like next lap. it's pretty wild. But now let's talk about you got into teaching, because when I heard your name and saw you, it was 2013, you were teaching Pingwing. I mean, I was in the beginner class, so I wasn't with you in the class that you taught. What made you decide to start teaching and doing that part of it?
Well, I mean, I watched that happen, my whole life, with my father in the school and stuff. And I was given the opportunity to teach the advanced course. I would say probably started in the mid 90s. I had just won my first national championship doing FUSA stuff. So I felt like we finally had the credentials to start doing some teaching and stuff. And I probably wasn't that great when I first started. It was a learning process like everything else. I understood how to do things and the teaching methods of the old days were often just like, hey, let me show you, you know what I mean? And I can explain theory and that kind of stuff. And my brain as a mechanical engineer, I kind of work differently there. So, I break things down to a physics standpoint, and I don't, it's real easy to get people glassy eyed. So probably what I needed to learn early in my career was how to translate mechanical things in math, which most people can understand. If they don't do it every day, it's hard to expect them to speak that kind of language. People aren't going to understand calculus if they've never taken it, right? So, but physics is a wonderful thing because we all experience the world every day, and there's things that are very relatable with motorcycle racing, like everything down from how you feel traction to how you turn to the way you apply a brake lever and to what happens when you move on your life. What I learned as I learned to teach over the years was how to relate all of those things into tangible examples that people can definitely relate to, and it helped clarify the lessons that are out there. And so that's been an enjoy, and I still work on that every day. I mean, I've been teaching for 30 years, and I still figure out ways to communicate things better all the time. And I listen to other people who are also excellent teachers, and try to look at what their delivery methods are and how they go about it. And it's exciting for me every time still, if I get a student that comes in and they're struggling with a concept, and we can talk to them and help them understand the way something works and teach them the why of why. Like, I'm not going to say, hey, listen, like, I can show you, listen, go here. Okay. Trust me. This is the line, and you're a capable enough guy that if I make an X on the pavement, you can run it over, but you're not going to understand why you're there. And so I try not to just tell you what to do, but I'll kind of say, listen, if I can't give you a logical reason for why I'm having you do what I'm asking you to do, then don't do it. You know what I mean? And so that's been a really enjoyable part of my whole journey here, because the sport is so cool. I mean, it's like this is where it mixes like your survival instincts with athleticism and understanding mechanical things all at the same time. And so there's the ability to understand and develop and a machine. And then there's the whole, like, hey, you're an athlete on top of this, and you've got to understand how to move and manipulate your body and manipulate physics to get the traction you need in each particular segment of the corner, which changes constantly, dynamically all the time. And then you've got this whole fear thing where you need to survive. You've got to make sure that you do all this and you don't fall down at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. As my camera is acting up, but we'll sort that out in a second. Let me ask about just you talk about the survival instinct, because I remember first going to the track, and for me it was it was weird, because I mean, I haven't been in that environment, and as an adult seeing that, to me everyone looked like gladiators. And it looked like, when I first got to the track and stuff like that, I couldn't put my finger on it. And I think it was like maybe a few years ago, it's just like, it's almost like you're getting your mind and your body prepared to go into war or survival mode, where you move differently, you're calmer, so it's a different vibe, but you can feel the energy in the paddock, especially as you get closer to go out for your race and stuff like that. Have you noticed that? I mean, you've been in it so young, so have you noticed that with people and stuff like that, or environment in the paddock?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things to say there. I mean, there's definitely it's different than baseball or golf, right? Like no one at golf worries about breaking their leg when they swing it on the seventh tee. You know what I mean? Or they're trying to overtake the person they're playing golf against.
Right.
This is a different kind of deal. Like you need to, you're playing games back and forth with your own mentality. And some people, need to really focus on, keeping their mind on the task at hand instead of what they're afraid of at the same time. It's, it goes down to some of the very basic you teach the very first day that they're in a school of target fixation. It's like, hey, when in doubt, look where you want to go. Don't look at what you don't want to hit. If you look at what you don't want to hit, you're going to run it over. So look where you want to go, kind of thing. And that whole is very, very simple philosophy. But that translates to all kinds of things. It's like when you're doing all this stuff, like focus on the positive, focus on what you're trying to do. Don't ever talk to yourself about what you don't want to do. It's like if you're if you're trying to move your brake marker up and you're saying, don't break at the 4, don't break at the 4, don't break at the 4, because you want to break at the 3, your body doesn't even process the word don't. It just hears break at the 4. That's all it sees. And then so like there's all kinds of, and that's very, very elementary level for this kind of stuff. And so, that's one part of it. And that's, the danger is part of what makes it cool. I mean, like if we wanted to do this as a safest possible way, we'd be racing remote control cars, which doesn't just seem to be nearly as much fun. So I want to be at Daytona, and I want to be drafting someone going 182 miles an hour, in proximity of the wall, and being able to have to say, I've got to turn this thing with everything I got because the G-forces are so big. And like, I want to feel that. I want to experience that. I want to be in this thing. I'm going to be the guy that, like, I don't want to experience skydiving on a video game. I want to jump out of the freaking plane. Let's do it. So, that's one of the really cool parts of this sport is that, and that kind of translates into kind of what happens in the paddock, because when the paddock is done right, and I think what we have in the Northeast is really special. There's a fine line between, going all out and trying as hard as you can to win, and leaving the guy that you're racing with that sliver of asphalt that he needs to survive. And that's it. You don't have to leave any more than that, but you have to leave at least that. And there's got to be that level of respect, and you've got to be able to trust the people that you're riding, elbow to elbow with at triple digit speeds. And so, that respect kind of translates into a culture of like, hey, we're all like, at least for me, like, I'll help anybody. I'll talk to anyone. You want to understand how to go through turn 6 at Loudon or any place else we're going, and you want to know a particular trick or tell me what you're doing wrong, that's fine. Like I want to, or if you need parts or that kind of stuff. And like, you see that level of help where you've got competitors helping each other put their motorcycles back together and staying up late and burning the midnight oil and taking parts off their own spare motorcycle to make things work. And that, like, it's such a cool community when it comes to that kind of thing. And I think that starts with that respect that we have to have with each other on the racetrack. And it translates into this whole little subculture. And I've, most of my best friends in the world, I know from road racing. And I don't think it's a coincidence. There's a lot of like-minded people. And it's probably my favorite community to be with, outside of my immediate family.
Right. Did you feel you left enough room for Stefano when he came up on the inside of you in turn 3 last year? I think it was.
Yeah. That was not a big deal. I mean, and Stefano and I raced Stefano since probably he was 14 and lying and saying he was 16. I raced him for a long time. You talk about someone I raced with down in Homestead. I mean, I've had plenty of battles with Stefano down in Homestead. In recent years, the kid's been pretty incredible. He's always been a good racer, and we went back and forth, and I kind of said, wow. I mean, when I was younger, we had a lot of good battles. So I beat Stefano quite a few times, but I don't beat Stefano right now. Stefano is quite, in recent years especially, is just kind of late in his career, elevated his game more than other people his age did, and that was impressive to me that he did that kind of. And Stefano's not really old, but I mean, I think he's probably early 30s by now. And I would say that, he really blossomed in his late 20s into what I would call the peak of his career, when he was like really out. And that's kind of like a little bit of a late bloom for some guys. And so he was very impressive. And he was a wild man when he was younger. We had a couple of discussions when he was 16 or 17 years old. But we don't have this anymore. He's a great kid and a great guy, I should say. And he helps a lot of other people ride. Super capable guy, and someone I have immense respect for out there. So yeah, Stefano's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. So let's talk about the Neymar. You're also doing that as well, so not just Pingwing. How did you get involved in that part of it? I mean, from my point of view, I seem like you're always there because you're always leading the riders' meetings and stuff like that, or one of the people talking in the riders' meeting and stuff like that. Is it just, again, because part of the Pingwing program?
Well, I mean, when Neymar kind of came into being, the racetrack, and I'm sure you heard this story from John. John Grush and I were working together with some school stuff, and we got called into the main office by the people that own New Hampshire Motor Speedway and who owned the racing series. And we didn't know exactly what was going on there, but we walked in and they basically said, hey, just so you're aware, we're not going to run the series anymore. So if you guys want it, you should run it. And we kind of said, okay. And kind of walked out of there and said, what did we just sign ourselves up for? And so John and I ran it together as kind of co-heads of the organization for the first year. And then it made sense for there to be one person in charge. And I already had lots going on. Not that John didn't, but John was willing to take on the mantle and run the thing himself, which was fantastic. He's been doing a great job. And I've had a lot of insights as to the extra efforts he's gone to really make sure that we have a series that's sustainable for the long term and we're moving the series in the right direction. And so I've kind of always stayed on as kind of the technical director. Like, we always talk about, things that help with my experience. I've worked with lots of different racing organizations. I've seen tons of different clubs and how they run around the country, and had some insights about how to build things. When we put the whole thing back together, like one of the concepts that I thought was really important was to bring the street crowd and the track day riders into the paddock. And so we instituted the Super Street program, which was a concept that I had observed a club out in Colorado do very successfully, and thought it was the perfect model to help ensure the long-term viability of the club. So we just said, hey, we need a place where someone who doesn't have a race bike yet, you know what I mean, but it has come and done track days and understands what's going on and does a very basic amount of class, can be part of our race program and do it in such a way that's like it's racing, but it's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of like a track day race hybrid, and it's not serious, but they can come and they can stay and ride. Like, so they come into a school on Friday and they say, hey, you know what, this was fun. I'd like to stay for more than one day. And so they can take that same motorcycle that they use in the school and basically like stick a front number plate on it and put a transponder on it, which is easy to do. And then they can stay and ride the weekend, and they can ride with other people that are just like them. They don't mix with racers. They're with other super street level riders, and stay and be part of the day and watch the racers up front and close. And it's worked really well, because we've had tons of people they say, well, I can stay and do Super Street. And yeah, I'm going to line up and I'm going to do a start. And we say, listen, you do the race for Super Street. We don't care how you do. We just care that you're safe and you're out there doing it right. And so, you can take off and you can start in the back row if you want. No big deal. And people start like that. It's pretty tentative. And then they get kind of hooked a little bit and they start racing with their buddy a little bit. And before you know it, we've had a ton of these people that have said, you know what, this is really cool, and we want to be a permanent part of your pack and go on and get the real race license and start as novices and go from there. So to me, if there's any success story that I'm really excited about, besides the big Loud and Classic thing that got put together, that's the thing that I think is I'm most proud of, because that's been a really successful program. It's really helped bring the sport to people that I think otherwise might have been afraid to try it. Right. And I'm really a huge proponent of this. Like, I believe to my bones that there's nothing in the world that's cooler than riding a motorcycle on the racetrack. And, if you can take some of the barriers away from people and make the entry price easy and make it so that you don't have to have a full race bike and it's not that big a deal. And hey, just treat it like fun, which you do. And, Steve Nagara, who helps us with our basic course, also helps coordinate the Super Street schools, and there's just like some class that goes on along with that, and he does a fantastic job with those guys. He's the perfect personality to bring those people along and keep them all excited and give them good information when they need help. And it's really been a success story that I think will sustain itself for a long time. So we really like that part of what we got going on there. And so I've always had a good relationship with lots of the racers. So John, I talk at the riders meetings because, I'm fortunate enough to have tons of people that I know, and I'm glad to help him in that way because he's got plenty going on.
Mhm.
And he doesn't need to be talking about every single thing at the riders meeting and everything else he has going on. So if I can just take that off his plate and just tap into some of the experience I got and help communicate with the guys when we're doing stuff, why we're doing it, and that kind of stuff, I'm happy to do that always, you know. And so, that's an easy role and kind of fun.
Nice. What do you say to folks that are a little skeptical about coming to the track, and I'm pretty sure I've heard it, so I know you've heard it. They say it's dangerous; they'll never get out there and stuff like that. I've even heard some people say, track riding is more dangerous than street riding. What do you say?
I giggle at that because if you want any evidence, just listen to your average racer who goes, "Hey, you want to go back and ride in the street?" They're like, "Ew. Street's dangerous, man. This is like crazy." We don't have 18-wheelers and kids texting and SUVs and old ladies backing out of driveways and, sand in the middle of the street and, telephone poles and mailboxes and, stone walls and that kind of stuff. And, if there does happen to be some sort of wall, that's on the edge of our racetrack, they buy this 4-foot thick foam padding they put in front of it. So, and if something does happen, there's an ambulance sitting right there, not 20 minutes away while you bleed out in the street. I mean, listen, street riding is great. But I believe that you need to have a much, much higher degree of restraint on the street and leave yourself way more margin than you do on the racetrack because you've got all these variables that are taken out. I mean, all that stuff I just talked about, if there is some problem, if there is some truck in the middle of the road, there's sand, or there is, you have someone jumping up and down, waving a flag at you, letting you know it's there. You know what I mean? So, and you can't ride anywhere near the limit that you can on the racetrack safely. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because of all the removal of all those dangers, I can take any street bike and move it right up to 80 or 90% of its limit safely. I can't do that on the street, man. It's just and not live to be 54 years old. I don't think, it's just not how that works. And so I believe the racetrack to be far safer than the street. Now, can you fall? Sure. Can you get hurt? Yeah, of course. But I can get hurt walking across the road. I will take my risks on the racetrack where I'm riding around in a leather suit and full protection with all those variables taken out any day over, riding like that on the street. And like I said, I have nothing against riding the street. Riding the street is great. But personally, right, my brain is wired to ride fast and to really if I get on some motorcycle, I go buy a Panigale V4 or something like that. What the hell am I going to do with that in the street?
Yeah.
I mean, put that in second gear and get arrested. I mean, that's pretty much what happens. You probably get arrested in first gear, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What are they more good for? I don't know. So, but I can take one of those things out on the racetrack and I can say, whoa, look what this thing can actually really do. You know what I mean? And the other thing that happens with the track is because you get these opportunities to do these things repeatedly and that kind of stuff, you can really work on your skills. And that's so super important is I can do this corner, you're going to go out there and you're going to do, whatever, 8 laps in a session and you get 6-7 sessions in a day. And, it's how many is that? I'm going to do 50 times. I have to try this corner 50 times over and over again. And I can actually test things. I can try and go a little deeper and I can try braking a different way and that kind of stuff. And when you start being able to ride closer to the limit and learn how to catch your mistakes and that kind of stuff, it becomes muscle memory. And having those correct reactions become muscle memory is what saves your life in the street.
Right.
Because then something happens and the idiot in the truck does back out in front of you or something does happen like that. And there's some obstacle you didn't expect to be there. You've got the correct reactions ingrained into your muscle memory. So now if you can just stop as fast as you can, you don't hork the brake on all at once like your average street guy who, I don't blame the average street guy, but he doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
And so he grabs the brake, tucks the front, and stuffs himself under the truck, and he gets killed. Right.
I get killed, but I did that.
But where the racer knows how to apply the brake as hard as he can, take lean angle out of it, and do all the other things that you learn on the street, and how to target fixate, how to look for the solution, how to find the hole that you're going to escape through rather than drill the side of the truck. All that becomes automatic. I was telling someone the other day about the scariest moment that I think I ever had racing was just something that my brain did by reaction. It was 2004. And the AMA had just switched from 750s to 1000s for superbikes, right? Mm-hmm. And we're at Daytona. Now, in the old days, there was a CCS club race warm-up weekend before the National, and all the pro guys would go. And so we're out there on our 1000cc superbikes at Daytona on the banking. And I'm going around East Banking, getting ready to go around and come out for the chicane. And I'm on a 1000cc motorcycle, and I'm doing 160 miles an hour. And the thing's, super heavy in my hands. And I got to set, like, you have to treat the banking, which is this, gigantic oval. And I have to treat the banking corners like a corner, like on a small bike or on the banking, you just kind of go around and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you got to muscle it, but like 1000, like you got to start up high and you have to turn the thing in the right spot. And you get an apex in the right spot because there's so much centrifugal force in that thing. Mm-hmm. If you don't do that, it drags you all the way up to the wall and you can get really hurt. You know what I mean? So I'm treating it like that. Now I'm going 160. Now there's some guy, this is a CCS club race weekend, who bought himself a 1000 and he's scared crapless. Like he's just like, whoa. And he's probably doing 80. I'm doing 160. And now 80 at the banking is like, you can do whatever you want. It's like the scariest guy on the racetrack is not the guy who's going the same speed you are. It's the guy who's going so slow that he has the ability to take a 90-degree turn anywhere he wants because he's got that freedom, right? You understand what I'm saying? Yep. So this guy I'm closing this guy with 80 mile an hour closing speed. And I'm like, I see him coming. I'm like, oh boy. And he's right in the middle of the track. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to drop down underneath him, and apex this banking where I want to. And as I get about here, he goes, oh, and turns left. And I literally just said, oh my God, what's he doing? And I focused just out of reaction on where I wanted to go. And I'm not exaggerating. I missed his back tire with my front tire by about half an inch. Wow. And it was turning the bike as hard as I could up the banking to make it happen. And just like, we did this crisscross 80 mile an hour thing. And I just went through the chicane, pulled in the bank and just kind of like, okay. All right. Little deep breath. That could have been ugly. And I saw the results of a incident like that not long before, because back when Daytona Motorsports Group, DMG, ran the Superbike series for a couple of years, which was an atrocity. They thought it was smart to have pace cars out there during Daytona. Yeah. And so we were out on a Superbike race, and a pace car came out, and I believe the two were involved were Jamie Hacking and Aaron Yates. I could have this wrong, but anyway, I knew they were both riding blue and white bikes. And, it was probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 laps into the race. And I came around the banking in that same exact spot and I'm not exaggerating. The banking is 60 feet wide and it's probably 1,000-foot shot down to the chicane from there.
Yeah.
And it was nothing but parts everywhere. There was just pieces of motorcycles all over the racetrack everywhere. I went, whoa, something really bad went down right here. And what happened was the pace car pulled out, and I don't know who was in front or back of him. And then Hacking was in front and Yates was behind him. Hacking saw the pace car. Yates didn't. Hacking checked up and Yates went boom and drove in the back of him, and both their bikes exploded. And that's someone that probably had a 20 or 30 mile an hour closing speed, but one guy chopped the throttle, and now double or triple that, and it's like, oof, that'd have been ugly. But like the thing that saved me in that situation was just years of training myself to say, when you see something crazy, seek the solution as fast as you can, make a decision and go. And if you spend more than a fraction of a second thinking about it, that can be the difference. Literally in this case between life and death. And so, and I've had my kids tell me, and my kids did motorcycles. They didn't do it to this level. They were just having fun, but like driving their cars. But the little bit of racing that I had them do is like, man, it's a couple of times they're like, what I did, like, I just like my brain just automatically did this. And they said, I've watched my friends do the same stuff and they froze up and smashed the car and get in accidents and hurt themselves and hurt the cars. It's like, I don't know, racing helps you train to look for solutions, which I don't think in life there's ever a case where that's not a good thing.
You're right. And unless you know to practice it, because the same thing when I was a young guy, I froze in my first accident in a car. And I thought I could drive and then realized I couldn't because I would have missed the pole if I could. So I had to learn how to drive better and learn to pay attention, use my eyes more. I mean, I love four wheels more than two. Well, I love two wheels too. I can't say more, but I've been on four wheels longer than two wheels. So I just got more time on it. Let me ask about the mentor program, and we'll talk about Woodcraft a little bit. You decided to do this mentor program. What has that been like? What was the reason behind deciding to say, okay, I'm hearing you. You're already a busy man. And you're like, I'm gonna do this one more thing.
Well, okay. So the mentor, you asked me the reason is, and it's clear as day because I can remember I had the vision burned in my head forever. So I was teaching my advanced class, and I'm sitting there, and it's a good sized class. There's probably 18 or 20 people in there. And, I'm going through, and I'm kind of one of those days where I'm talking and we're hitting a subject that's almost automatic, and I'm almost kind of like watching myself from above a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of looked around the room as I'm talking, and I'm like, there's not a person in this room that doesn't have a little bit of gray hair. Like, there's not one. I don't think I get a student in here that's under 40. And I'm like, I got a full class. I'm happy. This is good. But like, I'm like, this is not good for the sport. Like, and I sat there that weekend and kind of looked around the paddock and was remembering my younger years riding. And at that particular weekend, I think there was like 2 kids at the racetrack. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of them was particularly serious. And I came back. I'm like, man, I'm like, if we don't fix this, I mean, there's no future, because there's going to come a day that all the 40 and 50 and 60 year olds become 60, 70, 80 year olds, and they're not going to be riding anymore. And so, we need someone to carry the sport along. So, and I kind of made that comment, that observation to John Grush, who, was still pretty heavily involved in the school at that time. He was helping me teach back then. And we decided, and he told me actually about how they structured some of these mentor programs for the skiers that they had. Because John, many people know, when he was in his younger years, was a world-class skier. And so, yeah, and literally could ski at the world level. He was a borderline Olympic guy that might have been there had he not skied through a ski shack and put himself in a coma for 6 months. That's a different story. Yeah. But anyway, so that came from that, and we said, you know what, my goal is I want to go from 2 people right now, and I said, and if 5 years from now, I want to see 20 kids at the racetrack. And so, how do we do that? And it's like, well, we take some of the knowledge that we have and some of the questions for both kids and parents, and we say, hey, listen, like, we've done this, and we want to share our knowledge with you guys, and pick a select group of kids that have the right kind of attitudes. They got to be good kids. They got to be, getting good grades, and they got to be willing to be good representatives of the sport at the same time and have talent. And we want to bring some of these kids into the program. And we got really lucky in that we got some just fantastic kids along the way. Our first couple of kids we brought on the program were like Ben Glotty and Teague Hobbs, who were both just absolutely fantastic kids, incredibly talented, motivated. And, make a long story short, from the time we took those kids in the program, both of them within 5 years had not only gotten to be front running club races, which was our original goal. So like, they won Moto America Nationals, both of them. And so we're like, wow, and then, we had all kinds of, like the Brianna McHugh and Jacob Crossman and Renee Franco, and the list goes on of just like these great kids that we brought in that did all kinds of really fantastic things. And, we've had probably a couple dozen kids through our program. And I think that as we have brought kids through, it's, those kids tell other kids about it. You know what I mean? Wow. And the kids that might go play soccer, go ride supermoto instead for a little while. And they go, hey, listen, like, there's a path here. You know what I mean? And so, and, there's nothing that brings excitement to the paddock like watching a 12-year-old kid like Nathan Betancourt go out there and ride and beat adult experts. And people go, whoa. And it's fun. You know what I mean? It's like, it's always cool to see all kinds of fresh new faces come up, and anyone going through the ranks for the first time has a fan club, which is always cool. You know what I mean? And everyone wants to root for the new guy, and that's awesome. It's great for the sport. But it's a little extra special when it's a kid who's 12, 13, 16 years old that's a good kid to boot. And there's lots of people that have been doing this for a long time. All those people with gray hair, some of them have had businesses and they do well enough that they're willing to help a little bit. And like these kids get some help and it's just been really cool. And so, I had been racing for a long time, and not that I don't enjoy racing, I absolutely do, but it's like, I've been doing this for a while and I've ridden Loudon a million times and I've done tens of thousands of laps there. And I'm like, what can I do to make this a little more exciting? And it's like, well, I can share what I'm doing with a group of kids. So I've got kids this year still that are really good. I mean, Nathan Betancourt and Tommy Hines and Cole Thompson are in our program this year, and we're just excited to share as much as we can with them. These kids are motivated. Nathan's going to ride World Supersport 300 this year. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome, and Tommy and Cole are both great kids, and I've watched them develop in a bunch of different ways. Like, yes, they've all become better road racers, and winning championships and being up front, but they've also like developed in a bunch of other ways. They public speaking and their communication, and like you watch a kid mature and grow, and it's like, man, like like some of these kids, like I was talking to Renee again tonight. Like Renee hasn't been in the program for years, but she's such a good kid. And she, and she's moving on in her life and she's doing adult stuff and she's, got her jobs, but she's still racing and she's going to ride 3 different motorcycles this year and stuff. And just like, I'm super lucky to be involved with kids like that. And that we have the kids and the families in New England that are that kind of quality and just make you want to support them, in any way you can. So it's been, probably the energy back in my racing program for the last few years has absolutely been as a result of those guys. And then, like if I'm trying to motivate them and say, hey, listen, like if you want to reach this goal, it's hard. You're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. Right. And we talk about all these different things and like, it's going to be hard and there's going to be times that suck. And there's going to be time that you are the only one that's going to be able to motivate yourself. You know what I mean? And so I've got to be that example, even when I don't want to. There are days I don't want to work out. The days I don't want to go work on this. I mean, I don't want to go, like if I say that I want them to do it, then I have to do it too. You know what I mean? And just like they do, like they come to me and get racing advice and get, like I still learn myself. You know what I mean? Like just because I'm the teacher doesn't mean that my learning is stopped. I believe that my learning never stops. And there's, I can learn sometimes even from students, which is kind of amazing. But there's lots of people that I have lots of respect for. And so if I'm telling them to say, listen, figure out what the next thing is. And we talk about all these different strategies, but what's the next thing you're working on? What's the next skill you're working on? And they come back and like, if I push them hard enough and I piss them off enough, they'll ask me, well, what are you working on? I'm like, well, all right. And so I got to have an answer for that.
Right.
And so and so that need to be able to truthfully say, well, I'm working on this and this is what I did. And this is how I did it. You know what I mean? I've got to, it's kept me motivated. And so I give some credit back to my kids for the fact that, last year I had a lot of fun. And when the Loudon Classic came around and I was racing with those guys that are top national guys, I credit my kids back with giving me some of the motivation to do the work that was required for me to be able to expect the ability to do that. It's like, if you do the work, then you have the right to expect to be able to win or at least to be competitive. Right. But if you didn't do the work, then maybe you don't. And so you've got to be that example. So those guys have absolutely given me that motivation, which I'm grateful for.
Nice. That's a beautiful thing. Let's talk about, I've had other folks on. I have Nathan and Michael on the show, the other family members on the show, as far as their kids race and stuff like that. The road to MotoGP, World Superbike, the top level. I heard you mention how, 6-7 figures back in the day. Is it possible to bridge a gap? So, families, I hear stories, I don't know how true they are, but, we hear stories of riders putting up a lot of money to ride and stuff like that. You mentioned, folks with companies that put money in and stuff like that. Do you think about that side? How can we bring outside money into the sport or get the sport to a place where, riders can sustain themselves and not necessarily who they know or whether they have the best personality to sell products?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of different sides to that. For there to be money to be had in any program, like if you're really going to try and have money in it, the sport itself at the highest level has to have enough exposure. You know what I mean? And I think that listen, anytime you run an organization, right? And Motor America is no exception to this. There's going to be things that people do that they take exception to. They say, "Hey, listen, like these guys shouldn't be doing this. This is dumb." And I have my opinions for that kind of stuff as well. All right, but overall, I think that their heart's in the right place. They understand what they want to do, and they want to bring the sport to a high level. And I believe that they are succeeding in bringing more eyes to the sport. There's more spectators coming. There's better media coverage. There's more television coverage on the way, and TV time and true eyeballs in the sport. Like that's what's going to bring actual money back to the sport, right? And so that's going to be a slow process, and everyone's got to continue to be patient. But I believe that they're headed in the right direction there. You know what I mean? Yeah, every organization makes faux pas one way or the other, and you can disagree with things. But like I think that their overall goal to elevate the sport is fine, and they're doing well. So that's going to get better. The national level stuff. If I'm going to speak truthfully about it, right, and not just blow smoke because I love the sport and I want everyone to do it, which I do, you can do it. You can do national stuff at a baseline level for a reasonable amount of money, and it's not like it's not expensive, but you can get enough local support, I think, to put a program together for a lot of people. When you get to the top national stuff right now, unfortunately, this was not the case when I was a pro, and it's unfortunate because there were lots of rides for free. You know what I mean? Like my rides that got that brought me the teams that I rode for, right? They a lot of times they would get some support from the factory. They get bikes or they get discounts on motorcycles or that kind of stuff. Very few of them actually got real cash and stuff from the actual manufacturer, but some had outside sponsors and that kind of stuff. Like the first real factory ride I kind of got was like a Kinko's Kawasaki, which is like a factory supported Kawasaki team that had money from Kinko's and that kind of stuff. And that was, that was cool. And that was a little easier back then because there were more eyeballs to the sport. You got the crowds were bigger those days. Now they're getting better. There are some Motor America events now that have some good crowds. Some still suffer a little bit, but there are some events, things like Elkhart Lake and Laguna in recent years that have gotten better and better again, where they're getting big numbers of people out there. But I think what the big money is going to come from is from the television audiences and that kind of stuff, right? Now, from a local standpoint, we definitely train our kids to try and do two things. I mean, and this is just reality, right? Most of what the support comes from these days is from people who just want to help. Like, yes, there is certainly a element to it where certain businesses can benefit from the race stuff. It's challenging to have enough reach to make this happen, but it's going to it takes a real concerted effort on the kids' part to do things that will actually bring monetary benefit to a sponsor, but it absolutely can be done. And we talk about all that kind of stuff. So like, you've got to be attractive if you're going to be getting sponsors from two angles. You've got to be a good enough kid that the people that want to sponsor you actually want to help you. Like they like you, right? I know it sounds funny to say this, but like, that's where a lot of help comes from. It's like, hey, you're a good kid. You know what I mean? You're out there, you're trying really hard, you're working really hard, and you have respect for people, and you carry yourself well, and you present well in public, and that kind of stuff. And so people want to help that kind of stuff. And if you ask first, a lot of times for an older mentor to you recognize what they're good at, mm-hmm. and you ask that person to help share some of their knowledge, the average person is usually a pretty good person. And they want to help. And an older person that's had success in life actually relishes the opportunity to share their knowledge with the younger person. And it's like sometimes you're actually doing that person as much a service as anything else. Cause like, sometimes you do stuff, you sponsor people because you think it's going to help your business. Other times you do it because, it makes you feel good and you like what's going on and you want to do it with someone good. So you kind of have to balance that, and it's interesting because Quarterly, again, taught me some interesting stuff about that because he got some sponsors along the way and he had some big time stuff. He was sponsored at one point by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And if you don't know who that was, it was like it was a big cartoon back in the days, right? And the guy was into it, right? And so, how do you drive value for the guy that owns Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? He doesn't care. He doesn't need your, you're not going to make him more money. You know what I mean? But if you put on a good show that like, hey, shows you're trying to promote his brand and that kind of stuff, or then he can write it off. But then like when that guy comes to the racetrack, your obligation then as someone who wants to get sponsored, wants to continue to be sponsored, is to like figure what that guy likes and figure out what he wants to do and make him feel like he's involved. Give him what he's looking for. Like guy like that doesn't really need money. He doesn't really care if more people, if 1,000 more people watch the cartoon on Saturday morning, like it's not going to affect his bottom line. Yeah, it might. And he can write off the expense because it does, but he's going to spend the money on that because he wants to either have the prestige of being an owner, or he wants to get special access to the races, or he wants to be treated like someone who's important and he wants to do something important on the team. And so you need to understand those needs and what the motivations are, the people who can actually help, and then genuinely go to serve them. And it's a win-win, you know what I mean? Because, you get to help this person achieve something that they want. And at the same time, they get to help you do what you want at the same time. And so I think that you need to really think about those things in those terms if you're going to be successful. And it's not one particular formula that's going to do it. It's you have to put that all together. And these programs can be built like that. So that's the kind of thought process I think that we've been teaching the kids to try and go after when they're trying to get help. And it's been successful. We've had, Renee, who I was talking to today, has a dealer, and I'm not going to do promotion stuff. He's a good friend of mine. He's a fantastic individual and he supports her because he's just a great human being. But she has support from a dealer who's a friend of mine. And, she's doing it because he likes her and he recognizes what a good kid she is and how hard she is. And he wants to help because why? Because he can. And it's like, if I'm going to put some of my effort and my heart, like I want to help someone like this, and I can see some of myself in her and that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that works for a lot of people. And you can do club racing like that forever,
Oh no, definitely. And I appreciate the words because, from the outside looking in, and I'm more the outside looking in, it and just hearing families and stuff like that, it seems like, there's a door that's closed down the road. They just haven't gotten there yet. But, but hearing you, with this information, it is, if you're starting early enough and you do build these relationships like that, it's possible that door may never close.
And listen, if you're going to do national stuff, right? Sometimes if you're really motivated, like you need to go and make a sacrifice and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go do a season and I'm going to pay for it. And I'm going to figure out a way to do for it. And sometimes you go into some debt and do this kind of stuff. And like, if you want to get help at that level, it's a combination of being either really, really fast, okay, and working your butt off. Now, like, a person that comes to mind of someone who's put that work in and really earned what she's got is Kayla Yakov, right?
Right.
And there are people that talk about, oh yeah, she got opportunities because she's a girl and everything else, and there's lots of press behind that. I'm like, dude, Graham Rahal and Ben Spies hired her not because she's the fastest girl in the country, because she's the fastest under 18 rider in the country, period. And that kid has the whole package, right? She does all these things that I'm talking about. She's super likable. Why? Because she's a good kid. Like she doesn't do anything stupid. She speaks intelligently. She doesn't do anything dumb. She works her butt off. And I have all the respect in the world for her recent podium finish in the Daytona 200 because I know what she did in the off season.
Yeah.
She went down there and lived down there and sacrificed and rode every day and found the best method she could, which PJ, who is her teammate, also a really good kid, is like recognized her. And what did he want to do? He was not just her teammate. He was like acting as her mentor. He's helping the teacher along the way, showing her stuff and how to ride at that level. And they trained and trained and trained and trained. And that kid put in the work that I have not seen anyone else. Like, there is not a harder working person in the paddock than Kayla Yakov. So when she finished on the podium, man, that kid earned that.
Right.
And that makes me, and someone like that, dude, who doesn't want to support someone like that?
I know.
You know, I mean, sponsorship should be easy for her to come by, but it's not easy. Like, it's easy because she did all this work. And that's why she gets all that stuff, because she earned that stuff. You know, she freaking drafted a guy who's ridden in MotoGP for the third place in the win. Like, okay, like, kid, you earned that, kid. You earned that. You know, like there is no one pulling over. He trust me, he didn't want to get beat by her.
No,
you know, he didn't let her win. All right,
no.
So I mean, that's the way you do it. You know what I mean? You know, like, and another person you've been talking to, like Stefano, right? Stefano's had a bunch of good rides. Well, Stefano is smart. Stefano helps a bunch of people. He does a lot of teaching in the off season. He trains his butt off. He rides all the time. Oh, yeah. And because he rides all the time, the kid's got crazy skills. And he not only is he super fast, but he's very entertaining to watch. You know, like, the kid's wheels are almost never in line, right? So, and so, is that always the fastest way on the racetrack? I don't know. He's made a pretty good living doing it, but either way, it's super entertaining. So there's like a certain group of people that says, "God, like, I want to be on that kid's bike." Why? Because he's a freaking animal, and I want to support that. Like, that's the kind of stuff that it takes. Not everyone's cut out to put in the kind of sacrifice and work it takes to excel at that level. If you are that, like, that's what it takes. You know, like, there's, for every Stefano Mesa or Kayla Yakov, if there is that gets it done, there's 10 people that have the same amount of talent but haven't put in the amount of work.
I agree.
It's just a reality.
Yeah, it is. And which you know, I mean, it's unfortunate for those folks that don't. I mean, I understand it, because I mean, it takes a lot to motivate yourself every day when you don't want to do it. You know,
and I have to say this too, right? Is that you can do all the right things and you can do all the work and everything else. And unfortunately in life, sometimes you have to have a little bit of luck.
Yep.
The right person has to be there. You got to put yourself in the right circles. They got to see you. So part of the thing is, like, if you want to have the opportunities to get these sponsorship deals, these chances of these rides that are there, you know what I mean? Then you have to put yourself in the spot. You have to show up at the races. You have to be there. You have to be in their faces. The people that are looking around, looking for the next kid they're going to hire to ride their Twin Scup bike on their team, they're going to look in the paddock for who's showing up and who's showing promise and who's putting effort in to give that ride, or maybe let you buy that ride that would normally cost 80 grand and let you pay 40 grand for it, or whatever that is. Yeah. And you got to look for those opportunities. You know what I mean? And so, but unfortunately, there are certainly people that have done all the work that those guys have too, and just haven't had the good fortune. So the reality is there's always an element of luck to it as well. You know what I mean? But you got to put yourself in the position to have the luck to begin with.
Yeah, I agree, because it's tough. I mean, Charles Barkley and Reggie Miller comes to mind, people who came close to getting titles and don't. And I mean, there's a lot of folks in the motorcycle world as well. Injuries or one thing or another. Just they did everything right, and it's life. And I think we all have parts of that in everyone. I don't think anyone will get out of that. Before we get out of here, though, let's talk about Woodcraft. I started hearing about Woodcraft before I started coming to the track and stuff like that. It took a little bit for me to put the two and two together that Eric Wood is Woodcraft. But like, how did that come about? And the work that you guys do, and it seems like you make parts that just work and they work the best for racers.
Well, that's kind of because that's where I come from, right? There is no one perfect product. You have to decide who you're making things for and what market you're going to serve. You can make the most beautiful jewelry out there, or you can make the lightest or that kind of stuff. And I decided that, like, listen, I want to make stuff that is as functional as it possibly can be. So let me go back to how it all started, which is your question. I'm a mechanical engineer. That's what I went to school for. I went and interviewed for jobs when I was done, and all my buddies were getting, corporate jobs at Gillette and that kind of stuff in Boston. And I kind of said, yeah. I went through the interview process, but kind of half-heartedly. I just never felt like it was like I didn't have a desire to go work for a big company and do that kind of stuff. So I literally took my mechanical engineering degree and went back to work for Brockton Cycle Center as a parts guy for a few years, and just kind of went through probably 700 business plans of what I could do for my own business along the way. And I'll make a long story short, but I had a friend, TJ, who was a factory mechanic for a Yamaha team, and he lives close by to where I was working. And well, he was not a factory mechanic for Yamaha team at that point, but he got that offer, and he was working with a local machine shop, and they were trying to make rear sets, and they had made one rear set kit, and I had seen him, showing off his one kit that he had at the racetrack a couple of times, and he was trying to work together and get a business off the ground, and came to me and said, "Hey, I got this job offer from Yamaha, and I've been working with these guys. I know that you're a mechanical engineer. You have any interest in doing this?" And I kind of went home and thought about it and said, "Yep. This is the opportunity that I'm waiting for," and just took it from there. And I never imagined that it would be a 30-year career. I did that in 1996. Now 2026. This is 30 years doing this. And we started just making rear sets, and then we started making clip-ons, and then we made stands and that kind of stuff. And I read a bunch of books about how to market and do that kind of thing, and how to design. Like, I knew how to design products, but I didn't I understood philosophies of how to build things and how to target things for a certain market. And I said, listen, like, I'm a racer, right? And I need to make stuff that does the function perfectly, but like at the same time, if I crash on it, this has to be repairable. It's got to be easy to do. And everything that I sell, and I've now got, a dozen product lines and make things for thousands of different motorcycles. I have to be able to take any particular product line that I sell and articulate to you in 15 seconds or less why this is the right product for the market group that I'm looking to sell it for, like, which is going to be people that are performance riding on the street and track days and racers. That's my core audience. We make parts for other bikes and other stuff, but like that's what hits home. That's where my passion is. And I have the good fortune that, like, I do other things in this world, and so my whole life revolves around street bikes and riding fast on the racetrack. And so when it comes to making product lines, I'm fortunate to have the insight and have access to other people that can help me understand the insight of what they're looking for. And so we can build products that are going to work, that are going to really suit the needs of people. And then I try and sell them for a price that racers can afford. And we try and make everything here in the USA and try and, just do all the right stuff. And, sometimes it's the simple stuff that makes a difference. You know what I mean? Just making sure you treat people right. And I know it sounds like a very trite and simple thing to say, but like, how many businesses have you worked with that you're thrilled to work with, that every time you call them, they give you exactly what you need, or if they call you and if you call them and you're looking for something and they don't have exactly what you're looking for and they point you to somewhere else, like, how many companies do you know like that? And to me, it's simple, but like, that's how I would want to do business. That's how I would want to be treated if I could. So it's just like, it's a pretty easy constitution to roll by. And I'm fortunate to have a lot of great people that work with me, because I absolutely can't do it by myself. We now make all kinds of stuff, from every kind of control apparatus you've got to electronic key switches and all the bike protection stuff you want to, we have a couple product lines that we carry that aren't ours, that we believe in, like the armor bodies and like the Indel exhaust and that kind of stuff. And, we servo buddies, and like, it's just, I'm super lucky, man, because I get to go to work every day and work in an industry full of people that I love with stuff that I'm genuinely passionate about. I don't know what else you could ask for in life. You know what I mean? It pays my bills. It allows me to race and have the freedom to do the stuff I want. And I'm super grateful that I have this opportunity in life. So
And you don't ever think to, just go, buy a place in Jamaica or somewhere and just go fishing.
Dude, fishing's boring. I mean, dude, it's like, I mean, I've said this a bunch of times to myself. It's like, I could go hit the lottery tomorrow and make $100 million. And the fundamental things that I'm doing in my life wouldn't change. I'd still make motorcycle parts. I'd still teach my school. You know what I mean? I might fly a little nicer, along the way, and maybe have one extra car that was nice or something. But I don't need anything else besides what I've got, and I live just fine. You know what I mean? I don't need to make $10 million a year. I'm good. If I want to make $10 million a year, I'm not going to start a motorcycle business. You know what I mean? It's not what I'm here for. And so, that's my acid test. You know what I mean? Would I change my life significantly if I had $100 million? Nope. Then I'm probably doing the right thing.
Nice. Same here. I don't think I'll do anything differently. I've been doing the same thing for a long time now. So, and I enjoy it, and I do appreciate life in a way that, you got to do the things you enjoy doing, versus like when I was young, I chased money as well, and I realized young enough that it was just kind of like happiness is more important than how much you make at the end of the year. So
yeah, you need enough to eat, and it's fun to have enough to be able to go on a vacation once in a while and that kind of stuff. But once you've got a house that's paid for, and you have the ability to participate in a cool hobby like this, and you can go visit your family when you need to, like, what else does a person need? It's all good.
It's all good for sure, man. I want to thank you for coming on. I could keep talking motorcycles all night, but we'll stop here, man. I really appreciate coming on tonight and taking time to share a little bit of your story with us, because and I know you have a lot more to share, because you have a unique story in the fact, you've been doing this since you were 3 on 2 wheels essentially, and to be able to do that for a very long time. Not a lot of people can say that, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm grateful to be able to meet people like you. That's part of the cool part of this industry is, I've seen you around and I've seen your podcast, but now we've had a chance to talk a little bit with each other. And next time we see each other face to face, we'll have a little bit more to talk about. And I look forward to, talking to you again. If you want me to come on again, I'm happy to do that. And, just grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome, man. Likewise, I'm looking forward to see you in Loudon. Eric Woods, my name is Rex 45. It's the Be Forever Cool podcast. Peace.